Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the voice in your head talks to you more than anyone else does? And most of the time, it's not kind. It tells you to slow down. It tells you you're not ready. It tells you to play safe while your dreams quietly fade away. But what if that voice is wrong? What if it's not your intuition, but just an old habit? Because the truth is, the moment you learn how to outsmart your negative thoughts, you stop surviving and you start leading your life. Most people believe the thoughts in their head are who they are. They wake up with a voice already talking, already judging, already predicting failure, and they assume that voice is them. But here's the truth that changes everything. Once you truly understand it, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. And the moment you realize that difference, you take your first step out of mental prison. Think about it. If a thought pops into your mind and you can hear it, observe it, question it, or even argue with it, how could it possibly be you? It can't be. It's something happening within you, not something you are. Thoughts are more like software running in the background. They were installed over time through repetition, experiences, family beliefs, culture, past failures, and even things people said to you years ago that you never consciously agreed with. But your mind absorbed anyway. That's why negative thoughts feel so automatic. You didn't choose them. You inherited them. You practice them without realizing it, and practice creates patterns. Those patterns become familiar, and familiarity feels like truth even when it's not. Your brain doesn't care if a thought is helpful or harmful. It only cares if it's repeated. Repetition builds wiring. Wiring builds identity. And before you know it, you're living as if that inner voice is the ultimate authority on who you are and what you can do. But here's the empowering part. If those thoughts were programmed, they can be reprogrammed. Nothing permanent was ever written into your mind. The voice that says you're not good enough isn't some deep intuition or higher wisdom. It's an outdated script that's been playing on loop for years. And the only reason it still feels powerful is because you've been identifying with it instead of observing it. The moment you say, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough, instead of, I'm not good enough, everything shifts. That small change in language creates distance, and distance creates control. When you stop fusing with your thoughts, they lose their grip on your emotions. They go from commands to suggestions, from facts to noise, from identity to background chatter. And let's be honest, your mind has lied to you before. It's told you things would go terribly wrong that never happened. It's convinced you not to try, not to speak up, not to take the chance, and later you realized you would have been fine. Yet every time a new negative thought shows up, it presents itself as urgent, serious, and true. That's how the mind survives, by sounding convincing, not by being accurate. Here's something most people never realize. You can't stop negative thoughts from appearing, but you can stop giving them authority. Trying to eliminate them completely is like trying to stop waves in the ocean. That's not your job. Your job is to stop letting the waves decide where you swim. The goal isn't a silent mind. The goal is a mind that doesn't run your life without permission. Once you understand that thoughts are programs, you stop taking them personally. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, where did this pattern come from? And that question alone shifts you from victim to operator. You're no longer trapped inside the system, you're looking at it. This awareness is powerful because it creates choice. And choice is the foundation of change. Without awareness, you react. With awareness, you respond. You don't need to fight the thought. You don't need to suppress it. You simply need to see it clearly. When a negative thought appears, your only job is to recognize it as a program running, not a truth speaking. And here's the key: what you consistently identify with, you strengthen. If you identify as the thinker of every thought, you strengthen the chaos. If you identify as the observer, you strengthen clarity. Over time, the observer becomes stronger than the noise. The thoughts don't disappear. They just stop controlling you. This is where real confidence begins. Not in positive thinking, not in pretending everything is fine, but in knowing that no matter what thought appears, you are bigger than it. You are the space it appears in. And once you stop letting old programs define who you are, you finally get to decide who you become. And that's where real freedom starts. Once you begin to understand that your thoughts are not who you are, the next step is learning how to deal with them in real time. Because awareness alone isn't enough if every negative thought still pulls you into the same emotional spiral. This is where most people slip. They notice the thought, but then they argue with it, fight it, or try to push it away. And the problem is, whatever you fight, you feed. Resistance gives energy, attention gives power. So instead of wrestling with the thought, you do something far more effective. You catch it, you name it, and you neutralize it. Catching it means becoming alert to the exact moment a negative thought appears. Not 10 minutes later when your mood is already ruined. Not after you've sent the angry text or talked yourself out of taking action. The earlier you catch the thought, the weaker it is. At the beginning, it's just a sentence in your mind. Left unattended, it turns into a story. Then it becomes an emotion. Then it becomes behavior. Most people try to fix their behavior without ever addressing the thought that started it all. This takes practice because your mind moves fast. Thoughts come and go in seconds. But the more you slow down and observe your inner dialogue, the more you start noticing patterns. You'll realize it's often the same few thoughts on repeat. Same tone, same message, same doubt wearing different outfits. Once you see the pattern, you stop being surprised by it. And when you're not surprised, you're not controlled. The second step is naming it. This part is deceptively powerful. When you label a thought, you pull it out of the emotional part of the brain and into the rational part. Instead of saying, I'm scared, you say, this is fear. Instead of I'm not good enough, you say, this is self-doubt. That one shift changes everything. You're no longer inside the emotion, you're looking at it. Think about it like this. When you name something, you define it. And when you define it, you limit it. An unnamed emotion feels infinite and overwhelming. A named one feels temporary and manageable. The thought goes from being a storm to being a cloud passing by, still there, but no longer dangerous. What most people don't realize is that negative thoughts thrive on vagueness. They stay powerful as long as they remain undefined. The moment you name them, they lose their mystery. They lose their authority. They stop feeling like truth and start feeling like what they actually are, mental habits. And then comes neutralizing. This is where people often think they need to replace the thought with something positive. But that's not always necessary. You don't need to jump from, I'm going to fail, to, I'm amazing and unstoppable. That often feels fake and your brain knows it. Neutralizing is about removing the emotional charge, not forcing optimism. Sometimes neutralizing looks like saying, interesting thought, and moving on. Sometimes it's a deep breath. Sometimes it's reminding yourself, this thought has shown up before, and it didn't stop me then. The goal isn't to prove the thought wrong. The goal is to stop reacting to it, because reaction is what gives the thought momentum. Reaction turns a passing idea into a mental event, and once you stop reacting, the thought has nothing to hold on to. It fades on its own. Just like a fire goes out when there's no fuel. Here's the truth most people need to hear. You don't need to win against your thoughts. You just need to stop obeying them. Every time a negative thought shows up and you don't act on it, you weaken it. Every time you choose clarity over impulse, you retrain your mind. This is how mental discipline is built, not through force, but through consistency. At first, it will feel unnatural. Your mind will try to pull you back into old habits. That's normal. That doesn't mean it's not working. It means the program is being challenged. And every challenge weakens it a little more. Over time, catching, naming, and neutralizing becomes automatic. What once controlled your mood for hours now lasts seconds. What once stopped you from acting becomes background noise. You start responding to life instead of reacting to it. And in that space between thought and action, you finally regain your power. And once you have that power, nothing in your mind can control you without your permission. Once you stop letting negative thoughts run the show and you learn how to catch and neutralize them, there's another level most people never reach. This is where real mental leverage lies. Because the mind doesn't just create thoughts randomly, it responds to the questions you ask it. Your brain is a problem-solving machine. It is always searching for answers. And whatever question you feed it, it will work tirelessly to prove it right. Most people are asking terrible questions without realizing it. Questions like, why am I like this? Why does this always happen to me? What if I fail? Those questions feel harmless, but they quietly steer your mind toward limitation. When you ask, why am I not good enough? Your brain doesn't argue with you. It goes to work collecting evidence, past mistakes, awkward moments, failures you've already moved on from. And suddenly the question feels answered and the belief feels confirmed. But here's the shift that changes everything. You don't need to replace every negative thought with a positive one. You need to replace the question underneath it, because questions direct focus, and focus determines experience. The moment you feel a negative thought coming in, instead of arguing with it, ask a better question, not a dramatic one, not a motivational poster question, a practical grounding question. Something like, what's the next small action I can take right now? That question pulls you out of your head and into movement. And movement breaks mental loops. When your mind asks, what if this goes wrong? Respond with, what if it goes right? Or better yet, what can I control in this moment? Control brings calm brings clarity, and clarity always leads to better decisions. Here's what most people miss. Your mind can't hold two questions at the same time. The moment you introduce a new question, the old one loses power. It's like changing the channel. You don't need to turn the TV off. You just stop watching the show that keeps you stuck. This is especially powerful when fear shows up. Fear always asks future-based questions. What if they judge me? What if I fail? What if I'm not ready? These questions drag you into imagined scenarios that haven't happened and may never happen. The antidote is present-based questions. What's the smallest step forward? What would courage look like for the next 5 minutes? What's one thing I can do well right now? Those questions bring you back to the moment. And in the moment, fear loses its grip because fear lives in imagined futures, not in action. Another powerful question is, what would my strongest self do here? Not your perfect self, not your fearless self, your strongest self, the version of you that shows up even when it's uncomfortable. When you ask that question, you automatically step into a higher standard of behavior. You may still feel the fear, but you stop letting it make decisions for you. And here's the key, you don't need to feel confident to act confidently. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. Better questions lead to better actions. Better actions lead to better evidence, and better evidence rewires your belief system. This is how identity shifts happen. Not through affirmations alone, but through lived proof. Each time you act in alignment with a stronger question, you give your brain new data, and the brain always updates its beliefs based on evidence. Over time, the questions you ask become habits. Those habits become automatic, and what once required effort becomes instinct. You start to notice that when something goes wrong, your mind no longer spirals into self-criticism. Instead, it asks, what can I learn from this? When you feel overwhelmed, instead of freezing, you ask, what's one thing I can simplify? When you feel stuck, instead of giving up, you ask, what's one move that gets me unstuck? This is mental leadership. You're no longer letting your mind run wild. You're directing it, and direction beats force every time. Eventually, negative thoughts stop feeling like obstacles and start feeling like signals. Signals that it's time to ask a better question. And once you master that, Your mind stops working against you and starts working for you, because the quality of your life will never rise above the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Everything you've learned so far comes down to one truth that separates temporary change from permanent transformation. Your mind doesn't change through insight alone. It changes through training. Just like your body, your mind adapts to whatever you repeatedly do. Not what you intend to do, not what you understand, what you practice. Most people treat their mindset like a light switch. They think one powerful realization should flip everything instantly. And when it doesn't, they assume something is wrong with them. But nothing is wrong. They're just using the wrong model. The mind isn't a switch. It's a muscle. And muscles grow through repetition, resistance, and consistency. Negative thoughts don't disappear because you had one good day. They fade because you stopped strengthening them. Every time you notice a thought without reacting, you weaken it. Every time you redirect your focus, you strengthen a new pathway. This is how the brain actually changes. Through use, through repetition, through daily mental reps that most people skip because they're invisible. At first, it feels effortful. You'll catch yourself reacting before you remember to observe. You'll fall back into old patterns. That doesn't mean you failed. That's the workout. That's the resistance. Growth never feels smooth in the beginning. It feels awkward, uncomfortable, sometimes frustrating. But that discomfort is the signal that change is happening. Consistency is what most people underestimate. They wait to feel motivated. They wait for the right mood. But motivation is unreliable. Discipline is what trains the mind. Showing up on good days is easy. Showing up on average days is what rewires you. When you practice awareness, redirection, and intentional action daily, even in small ways, you send a message to your brain about who's in charge. Think about it this way. The mind learns through repetition, not intensity. A small daily practice beats a massive effort once in a while. Catching one negative thought a day and choosing not to follow it is more powerful than trying to overhaul your entire mindset in one moment. Small wins compound, quietly, relentlessly. This is why routines matter. Not rigid, punishing routines, but intentional ones. A few minutes in the morning setting your focus. A pause during the day to check your inner dialogue. A reflection at night on where you responded instead of reacted. These moments are mental reps, and over time they build strength you can rely on. What changes isn't just your thoughts. It's your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's constantly battling their mind. You start seeing yourself as someone who can handle whatever shows up. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. Because confidence isn't loud. It's calm. It's knowing that no matter what thought appears, you have the tools to deal with it. There will still be bad days. There will still be moments when doubt shows up strong. Training doesn't eliminate challenge. It prepares you for it. Just like a strong body still gets tired, a trained mind still experiences fear and uncertainty. The difference is recovery. You bounce back faster. You don't stay stuck as long. You don't spiral the way you used to. And here's the most important part. The mind you train today decides the life you live tomorrow. Your reactions become habits. Your habits become behaviors. Your behaviors become your reality. This is why daily practice matters. Not someday, not when things calm down. Today. You don't need perfection. You need persistence. You don't need to control every thought. You need to choose your response consistently. Over time, the noise gets quieter. The clarity gets stronger. And the version of you that once felt overwhelmed becomes the version that feels grounded. This is how you outgrow negative thoughts. Not by eliminating them, but by becoming stronger than them. So if you take nothing else from this, take this with you. You were never broken, weak, or incapable. You were simply running old programs without realizing you had the power to change them. The moment you stop identifying with every thought, catch and neutralize the ones that don't serve you, ask better questions, and train your mind daily, everything shifts. Not overnight, but permanently. Your thoughts no longer get to decide your worth. Your fear no longer gets to decide your actions. You do. And when you choose consistently and intentionally, you don't just outsmart your negative thoughts, you outgrow them. That's when your mind stops being your enemy and finally becomes your greatest ally.